Hey everyone, it's Sarah Howe. I'm back with you for another episode of Connections by APNC. You're in for a real treat today. Today we have Mike Roberts, who is our Director of Outreach at Addiction Professionals of North Carolina. What's exciting about this is Mike brings us his recovery story as we celebrate Recovery Month 2024, but not just his story, but how it has impacted others and how he has paid it forward. It's fun. We have a blast talking to him, and we're so excited to bring you into this conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Connections, the podcast from Addiction Professionals of North Carolina, where we explore the nuances of addiction and mental health through the lens of policy and practice.
We're your hosts, Morgan Coiner
and Sarah Howe,
and we're here to help you see how it all connects. Today in the studio with us, we have Michael Roberts. He is the Director of Outreach for APNC. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for being here.
We're excited to have you. First of all, you're our first in-person guest.
You're welcome.
On APNC Connections. So we're excited to have you, and we're also excited to have you as part of the APNC team. And we wanted to have this conversation today because we've been talking to a lot of different people about prevention, treatment, recovery, the data behind it. All is theoretical, but now we want to really get down to how it impacts individuals. So that starts with your story. Why are you here today? How did you, Michael, get to APNC today? What does that look like?
How long is this podcast?
3 or 4 days.
Okay, well, I hope you guys packed a lunch. So, how do I sum that up? How did I get here? This wasn't the plan, right? Like, I had no clue that I would end up at this spot. And I'm really grateful because there's a lot of people that have passed along this journey that wish they were here, right? And so, like, what am I going to do with all that pain that I went through other than share and, like, speak up about it, try to reduce stigma and shame, and then, like, reach back and try to help the next person out of the same gutter that I managed to crawl out of with a lot of help. Like, there was I don't get to take credit for this. I was doing a lot of things out there to kill myself, right? And so here I am. And, like, I don't know what else to do with it other than try to be helpful and use my voice. I really appreciate this platform.
I had a really random thought that doesn't naturally connect from that, but I really want you to tell us about your watch.
Oh, okay.
And the alarm on your watch, because I think it's a great story, and it shows us sort of how even, like, your past and your present can connect. You know, like, you are not the person you were when you were in active addiction, but you also are not totally separate from that person. Right. And so I think that, like, that watch story that you have, like, kind of is the linchpin in that for me.
Okay.
So I'd love to hear you tell it.
Yeah. Morgan asked about my watch, and I think it's sort of the same theme of, like, I didn't plan on this, to be in this spot, to be using my story and my voice to help other people. I didn't know, going through homelessness and withdrawal and jails and all the things that I went through, that I would be able to use it for this. And so the watch story, I call it my gratitude alarm. So I went through, this made it through active addiction somehow. I attempted to pawn it. They weren't going to give me enough to get the drugs that I wanted. So luckily I kept it. Anyway, in treatment, I was in a state-funded facility, and eventually I stayed long enough to get some privileges back. I got my shoelaces back. Anybody that's been to treatment knows what that's like. And a few different possessions, and one of them was my watch. And so I set this alarm for 5:45, and that was the time that I could shave. And we had 15 minutes to shave, and I was finally I was okay with how I looked. I was trying to, be a living human again. And so I set my alarm, and I left it on there after I left treatment, not knowing, right? And so now it's turned into this thing that I call the gratitude alarm, and it'll go off at 5:45 throughout the years now that I've stayed clean. And it's been really cool to see, like, One time I was in Miami with my best friend, being his best man in his wedding, and like it goes off as we're putting our tuxes on, and it was very surreal. And then like another time I was paddleboarding down the Keys on a trip that I took by myself, right? And it goes off, and like in these moments, I'm able to just stop everything I'm doing and like check my gratitude. Because at one point, I mean, a little over 7 years ago, I was homeless in a treatment center with my watch alarm going off so I can shave. And now like the world has opened up beyond that state-funded facility. So it's been a really, really cool thing that I've just kept, and I can find a moment and be grateful. And I encourage everybody to do that. Like, stop what you're doing right now, right? And like think of something that you can be grateful for, whether it's we got another day on the planet, it isn't just another Monday, right? This is a gift. And then like, or you know, our health, or you just won the lottery, and everything in between, like we can find something to be grateful for.
I think about when you talk about that and the work that many different things you've done in this field in the short time period that you talk about being in recovery, and the connections that you have made with people that have led you now to this work with APNC.
Yeah.
So tell us why you do this work out in the field.
How cool is this that like little old Candler boy from the trailer park in Candler, and like struggled through life and all these things, to be in this moment a director of outreach for addiction professionals in North Carolina. I interact with a lot of you guys that are brilliant and doctorates and PhDs, and I don't know, it's just a very surreal moment. So it wasn't the plan. And like, why? I think the question was, why do I do this?
Yeah.
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 Which is such a big question. But I think a lot of people don't have a purpose, you know? And like, I support folks now, you know, and I try to help them navigate what it is for them. And I'm just really grateful to be very sure about what I'm doing in life, and like why I'm doing this work and what I'm supposed to do with my career. And like, I don't know what to do with the years I spent homeless, or the times I withdrew in a jail cell, or I think about withdrawing in the Lowe's parking lot on Airport Road, and like homeless in my car, and like just feeling really horrible. Like those times, there's no other, I don't know what else to do with that pain and experience other than to help someone else, because I'm not unique. Like I hear these stories a lot of people that go through this stuff, right? And so like, what else am I supposed to do with it? And so I'm just very sure of what I'm supposed to do with that experience. I'm very sure of why my higher power, why the universe kept me here for this. And it was to give back to those folks. So I love that. I think that that's a gift. I support a lot of folks that are like, well, maybe I want to do this and maybe I want to do that. There's no maybe, you know, like I'm very certain I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
So, okay. So tell me this. You talk a lot about your experience in criminal justice. Mm-hmm. And so now you go into jails, you talk to people. So tell me about that experience. I mean, you've got a whole campaign right now that is out there doing stigma reduction. But for our listeners that don't do this every day, what are we talking about? What do you do out there when you start talking to people that are incarcerated?
Yeah.
How do you help?
Well, there's no, as you're asking me the question, I ask the question to myself, like, what am I doing? You know, and it's really good to really try and box it up, but it's kind of impossible. Each person is different. I do my best to meet them where they are. And then we just talk, and like, I definitely need you guys in my life with the degrees and the doctorates and the PhDs and the big brains, right? Like I need that. And
we appreciate that you think both of us have PhDs.
I know. Like, I'll
listen,
it.
You absolutely, you guys are brilliant. All right. However you want to describe it. And like, and then there's those of us that can relate, because I've been in that 9x9 cell. And so I think what I do is I try to meet each person where they are, and then like create a space where both of us feel heard and seen, you know? And like, I remember being locked up, and like, and some of the COs were cool, and, you know, we could talk, or they would come by and like tell me what time it was, because that's just something. So like I said earlier, we can be grateful for something. I know what time it is right now. And like being locked up in a jail cell, you don't. You don't have access to a clock. And if you haven't been there, you don't know that, right? Right. But like, some of the CEOs were cool, and they would come by and they would go, yo, it's 5:45, and I'm like, oh, okay, thank you, but like those little moments. And so that moment that we just shared, right? You guys had an aha moment of like, oh, wow, I never considered that. Those of us that have experienced it, we can connect like that too. And like, so I think that that's really what I do. And if we can sum it up to that, it's just, we just meet each other in those moments. And like, I didn't feel heard or seen in those moments. And so like, if I could provide that, I don't know. I think it's important, and it feels good, even if it's just for me. Yeah.
Well, your recovery is important too. So
thank you.
Yeah. I mean, the question that comes to mind for me is like, how do you give so much and then also like stay in your own recovery and maintain healthy? Like, it takes work to stay in recovery.
Well, it's not,
Yeah, like but it does. It's like when you're constantly like, if you're with Mike for a long period of time, I gotta take this call, and he's not buzzing off.
Yeah, what a phone's going off. That's great. Oh wow. Yeah.
But like, it's someone who needs help, and he will drop what he's doing and answer that phone call and get, whether it's just like, hey man, hang in there. Like, you can do this. Like, you just got to stay sober today. Whether it's like, yep, I know a recovery house for you. Whether it's, I don't know, let me connect you to this person because they've got, treatment. Like, whatever it is, he gets them there. And he always takes the call. Always. I have rarely seen him decline a call.
Listen, don't get me teared up, Morgan.
But I mean,
Walter.
Yeah.
You do all of that. But you've got a whole recovery yourself to maintain. Like, how are you able to do that?
The reason that I do it is because the example was set for me, that I had a few different examples of people that loved me every time. I went to treatment 26 times, right? And they met me there every time and like answered the phone each of those times and like all these different things. And so like, what if I'm that person for their journey? So like, I think of that. And then, so I have that pressure, and like, it's probably not real, the world and the universe, and people will find treatment without me. I just try and be that and give back. And I appreciate that example. And then how do I take care of but like, that's part of my recovery. Giving back feeds my spirit. Right. And if I'm able to be useful, and to Morgan's point, and I appreciate you pointing it out and reminding me of my own theory here, but like, if I look at what I do through the week and how much we work and all the things, and as a professional human, we're all busy. And but what does it take for me to maintain my recovery? And I really look at it, I break it down to about 8 hours a week, right? Like, I'll go to 3 or 4 meetings a week, and so that's around an hour. So there's 4 hours. And then like, I'll spend an hour with a sponsor through the week, or an hour with a sponsee through the week, or I'll work on steps through the week. And like, usually it's like 8 to 10 hours a week, to keep what I have. And like, as I think about how big my life has come from being in a tiny jail cell or being trapped on Merriman Avenue, homeless, or these different things, like, to where my life is so, I'm paddleboarding down the Keys, like, so like, in order to keep that, I spend 8 to 10 hours a week, like, sort of a no-brainer, and I'll continue to do it. And I don't know, this life was amazing. Like, I enjoy recovery, which is weird to say, right? Like, I remember thinking about, how do you have fun and clean and sober? Like, I don't know. We've only been here 15 minutes. We're having the time of our lives.
Right. We are
having the best.
Well, you're a good model of like what it looks like to have fun and be great.
Yeah.
So I have actually 2 different questions for you that I think are really important. They're really important to our listeners. And the first is, as we were talking about, not everybody listening to this is in our field.
Right.
So for those that are listening that are in need of to find their recovery journey or their loved one of the things we often hear, one of our myths, is you got to get out of your town and you can't come back to your town and you got to get away from it to maintain your recovery. You're living in a town
where you also had active use. So for those that are listening, talk to them about that.
So, I'm not special or unique. I want to make sure and say that. Everybody can do it however they need to, right? Like there's space to move away and get clean, and there's space to stay at home and get clean. And so I grew up in Asheville, caused a lot of damage and a lot of harm there. And I found recovery there, and I'm able to give back to that community. And I think it's the same everywhere, right? Like I could have done this if I moved away or not. But I put effort into reaching out, asking for help, and finally became willing. And it took so much help. Like it's such a gift. And in recovery, we call it the gift of desperation, which is such a weird concept, because when I heard gift of desperation, I was like, I don't want to be desperate, but like, I'm so grateful. I became desperate to stop living the way I was living and find a new way to live. Right. Like, so I'm really grateful for that gift. And I think that no matter where you are, when you get that gift, you can take it, you know? But like, it's been very special. I love that I was able to stay home and give back to the place that I harmed.
So I've heard you say this. I've heard you say it numerous times. I've shared it with other people because I think it's really profound. And I really think it bears repeating.
Write that down, Sarah.
I think you are. You have said many times over that shame and guilt didn't get you to recovery.
Right.
So for people who are listening and truly have a family member they need to help, what's your advice to that person on the other end listening?
God, well, so first off, those immediate feelings of frustration and anger and wanting to cause pain back and all that stuff, like that's so valid. And I get it, because I caused a lot of that same stuff to my own family and all this stuff. So like, I totally get it. And also it wasn't valuable for me in my journey. And so I always try and say it like what was told to me in recovery, right? Like I can't shame myself into getting better, you know? And that didn't, I don't know what effect it had on me and my story, but I can speak to the love and compassion and what that did for me, and it's why I'm here. So like, if guilt and shame could have got me here, it would have got me here a long time ago. And even from myself, I wasn't proud of the way I was living. I didn't want to continue doing the things that I was doing. I just didn't understand it. And so like, I wasn't able to shame myself. We say in recovery also that you can't use a character defect to overcome a character defect, right? And so like, it's got to be light overcomes dark kind of stuff, right? And so like, luckily I can see a few examples of love and compassion through my story, and I try to exhibit that now and support folks. And hopefully my advice, a lot of people ask me like, what's the solution? How'd you get here? Burning bush moment, loud booming voice in the sky, whatever, right? They want that answer, and I want it too. Unfortunately, if you're tuning in, I don't have it. What I can say is that love and compassion is what got me here. So like, the family member that's struggling or whoever, first things first, if we've been in active addiction long enough, it's not a party, it's not fun. I wasn't having a blast out there homeless. Drugs were my solution. I was just trying to figure out how to live life and bury feelings. So like, I would encourage you to just maybe love that person or like, hey, you're struggling, here's a sandwich, you want to go to detox, those kind of things. Like, it's love and compassion will speak to me when guilt and shame obviously wasn't able to reach me.
And I think it's important for policymakers, though, that doesn't mean accountability doesn't exist.
Right.
But I think it's like, what is shame and guilt but like stigma and action? You know what I mean? Like, we talk about stigma, reducing stigma and all that, and like, that's all you're saying, right? It's like, the stigma around addiction is inflicting shame on someone, right, who is in active addiction. And I think it's important, like you said, like, people aren't purposely out to get you. Right. Like, they are struggling with something very profound that actually has nothing to do with you. And that's so hard to remember when you are actively being hurt.
Yeah, right.
Whether it's like, you know, whatever that hurt looks like, it's hard to have any kind of compassion when someone is harming you.
Over and over.
But also, like, it's not them anymore either. Like, it's a very different version of the person that you love. And I think
harming themselves, and that's hard to watch and feel.
Yeah, it's awful.
And we take it personal, right? I mean, honestly, like the last time that my aunt let me sleep on the couch, and I was homeless, and I was like, please let me come here and, stay here. Finally, against her better judgment, she let me stay there. And they ended up sneaking into her son's room that night and drinking all the Listerine. Right. And so like she attempted it and against her better judgment, right, she tried to provide that kind of, and I kept harming those folks over and over to where eventually they were like, hey, we can't let you do this, but we love you. I mean, they never said like, we hate your guts, all this stuff. Right. And I was upset and like, you guys don't love me kind of stuff. And then like, I think it was maybe a year coming. I was like, thank you, for doing that. And like still saying you love me, but just creating distance and boundaries. And honestly, that example now is like people that are actively using and causing pain and all that stuff. Like today, I'm like, hey, this is how I can help you. You want to ride to detox? Like you need to ride to the hospital. Like that's it. I can't do anything else. You're not sleeping on my couch. I know the harm I can cause. So
I think something that's cool about sort of how you enter this work is that you always see, for lack of a better word for this, you always see the opportunity for redemption or recovery for the story to change. And I think that's important because a lot of people don't, and again, that's the stigma in action. We see, the person homeless on the corner asking for money. We assume they're going to go buy drugs. We assume they're going to go do this. We assume. And you look at that person and you say, like, this doesn't have to be it.
Right.
And like, I think that's what makes you so good at this work. And I think you see it because it was you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which
is really annoying because I want to be frustrated and like say a few curse words and disregard someone. It's simple and easy. And also those people didn't do that for me. Like I went to treatment 26 times. So when I get frustrated, I'm able to see that I was that guy over and over. And finally I'm here. So part of the value of my story, looking back and going, oh, I can't judge or give up on this person because I am that person.
Well, we expect that you'll be back. We have expectations. So, you're early in your career with APNC, but we're going to keep an eye. We're going to keep an eye on you and how you do, and maybe bring some stories back of your APNC days. And we're grateful for all the work that you do. And we're grateful that you're here.
I love this. Thank you for having me, for allowing me to do this work alongside of you, right? Because we can't, if one of us could do it, it would already be done. So
it's true.
I really appreciate this.
Takes a
Thanks for sharing your story. It's powerful. So we appreciate it.
Wow, what a conversation with Mike Roberts. First of all, how many of you are getting a gratitude alarm now that you've heard what Mike has to say about that? His point that every one of us can find something to be grateful for each day, even if it's just having another day, is really critical, especially in the work that we do. So take a moment to be grateful for something. We're grateful for you, our listeners, and we're so appreciative that you had the opportunity to listen to Mike's story and join us on this week's episode. We'll see you next week.